Hello, this analysis from the Leadership Execution Institute is going to tackle a pretty critical question. Why is it that traditional leadership training just can't seem to eliminate something called supervisor drift?
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to walk through this in 6 parts. We'll start by looking at the structural problem and defining what supervisor drift actually is. Then we'll get into the architectural failure of training, the human factors that drive drift, and why this is really a system-level vulnerability. And to wrap it all up, we'll cover the consequences this has for decision-making and risk.
Okay, so first up, a structural leadership problem. The main idea here, and it's a big one, is that when we see leadership inconsistency, it's not actually a skills gap. It's an architectural outcome.
So here is the central thesis of this whole analysis. Leadership inconsistency is an outcome of training architecture. It is not an individual performance failure. And this is a really fundamental shift in perspective. We're moving away from blaming individuals and starting to look at the system they're operating in.
That idea leads us straight into our next section, defining supervisor drift. So what is it? Well, it's the gradual deviation of behavior from the standards an organization sets.
So here's the formal definition. Supervisor drift is the gradual and often invisible deviation of leadership's behavior from organizational standards over time. Now, what's causing it? It's driven by 2 things: human habit decay and the absence of daily reinforcement. The critical point is that this isn't random. It's a predictable phenomenon.
This chart we're looking at, titled Execution Drift, really illustrates this concept. You can see 2 lines. The straight one represents organizational standards. That's the target. But the second, wavy line, that's the actual leadership behavior. And you can see how over time it diverges and the variance increases. So this gap isn't an accident. It's an expected outcome when reinforcement is missing.
Okay, so if we know drift is going to happen, then what's the fundamental issue with our training methods? That brings us to Section 3, the architectural training failure. The core of it is distinguishing between just transferring knowledge and actually reinforcing behavior.
This really gets to the heart of the problem. Let's compare the two. On one side, we have traditional training, which is all about knowledge transfer. It's episodic, right? It's an event. It's often theoretical, and that knowledge decays pretty fast. And what do we measure? Completion. Did they take the course? On the other side, you have what's needed, behavioral reinforcement. This is continuous. It's integrated right into the workflow. It's practical and context-based, and it's designed for habit formation. The goal here isn't to measure completion. It's to measure consistency. And the data on this is, well, it's pretty stark. According to research published by Harvard Business Review, a mere 12% of knowledge from training is consistently applied by employees during their daily operations. Think about that for a second. That means the vast majority of investment in this kind of training just doesn't translate into sustained behavior.
So we know the training itself has an architectural flaw. But what's actively pulling behavior away from the standard? Well, that brings us to our 4th section, human factors driving drift. These are predictable human constraints that accelerate this inconsistency.
This diagram here shows 4 specific human factors that have been identified as the root cause of inconsistent leadership. They are fear, overconfidence, negative impressions, and execution blindness. You can think of them as the phone factors.
So let's just briefly define each of these phone factors. Fear leads to risk-averse behaviors, to avoid uncertainty or criticism. Overconfidence is when a leader assumes their personal methods are just plain superior to the standards. Negative impressions. That's when prioritizing how you look takes over from seeking clarity. And finally, execution blindness is the simple inability to identify that performance is varying in real time.
And it is absolutely crucial to understand that these factors are predictable human constraints that operate within any operational environment. They aren't individual personality flaws. This isn't about pointing fingers at bad leaders. Okay, so when we put all these pieces together, the architectural failure of training and these predictable human factors, we get to our 5th section, a system-level vulnerability. We can now establish supervisor drift as a truly systemic outcome. And this leads us to a really critical conclusion. Supervisor drift is a system vulnerability, not a training deficiency. You can't just fix this with a better training course. It's an inherent vulnerability of any system that relies on episodic knowledge transfer instead of continuous reinforcement. So that brings us to our final section, decision and risk consequences. What are the implications of all this when it comes to evaluating and selecting leadership solutions? So, what does this analysis really mean for how leadership solutions must be evaluated? That's the key question for any decision maker.
While if this architectural issue is ignored, the risks are pretty substantial. You're looking at persistent execution inconsistency. You'll have compromised measurement integrity, meaning you can't trust your data. You'll see an erosion of cultural standards. You're going to fail to achieve any real ROI on behavioral change. And ultimately, you'll find an inability to scale leadership effectively across the organization.
The underlying research for this analysis is recorded in the following publications.
DOI 10.5281/Zenodo.1739416. DOI 10.5281/Zenodo.1742556. ORCID 0009-0004-6525-5634.
Published by the Leadership Execution Institute.